Hello, welcome again. This is the second year of losing somebody, and I wanted to talk about that because it is different to the first year. So, whereas the first year was like going down the rapids, as I said, the second year sort of settles out a little bit more. I actually found the second year very difficult. I think the second year is really hard because you're actually living what's happening now. In the first year, there's so many things happening, and you're in such shock, and you're so numb, and you just think you're going to wake up and it's all finished. But the second year is like reality really is biting, and this is like really real, and this is happening, and they have actually died, and you have actually lost them. It's a very hard year, the second year. So if you're not doing very well in the second year, don't be hard on yourself, okay? I actually found it difficult in a different kind of way. In the first year, everything was very choppy. It felt really choppy and like on the top of the river, very choppy. But in the second year, there was like a subterranean river of grief and misery and depression and loss. I don't want to be sounding negative. I just want to be really, really honest. I just found the second year really tough. You might be different. You might have a different way. You might have got your bounce back and be much better. But I actually struggled because I thought I'd be feeling better and better, and actually I began to feel worse and worse. In the second year too, this is sort of happening. The people have kind of stepped back. They think you're sort of healing, getting over it now, so there's less attention for the situation. I found people didn't really talk about it to me anymore. It was like it just happened and now it's over and done with. So there was not much discussion, and everyone was on with their own lives. That's within the family and also within your friendship groups. But your life is now really different without that person. It's really, really, really different. When you are doing things as well, I kind of felt they felt hollow. Everything had a hollow feeling. I felt it was hollow. So if I went to the party and they weren't there, my partner wasn't there, I felt hollow. And when I did different activities, it felt hollow. It felt like I was kind of going through the actions on the top of my life, but underneath my life, I just felt terrible. And I felt really miserable actually. And I felt really sad. I didn't cry as much, that's for sure. In the first year, I cried every day. In the second year, I didn't cry as often, but when I cry, it would be like I'd have a build up. And you might have had that too. You think you're doing really well now. I'm not crying. Oh, I'm much, much better now. And then you have this kind of big, I don't know, explosion of tears somewhere or one night during one night. And then you just cry and cry and cry and cry. I think it's a good thing because you're letting it out, but it seems to have a different way of doing it in the second year. It's sort of like a build up and then a big, I don't know, cathartic kind of crying session. And that's kind of interesting. It's different. I wasn't crying so much in all the shops. However, if I met somebody who didn't know that he had died and they saw me on my own and I had to go through the story, that was kind of weird. It was interesting because they were shocked and I was landing up sort of helping them out and sort of consoling them. It had a strange dynamic, I thought. And then when they had gone, or when I moved on and gone to the other shop or something, then it all kind of downloaded and hit me. It was really hard to tell people, actually, and I'd get a bit emotional, but they would actually get more emotional and more shocked, and therefore you had to sort of deal with them, and then later on you sort of deal with yourself. I know you know what I'm talking about because I know you've done this. It's kind of crazy. You'll end up soothing them when you're the one who's actually in grief. And I also did some emails in the second year to people who were on their outer circle, people that we didn't see very often or maybe hadn't seen for years. I sent them emails just to let them know because I thought they'd been part of our history, part of our life. And then I, of course, when the emails came back, dealt with their kind of shock. And but I felt good about that I'd actually let people know. It wasn't a good email to write. It wasn't nice to write, but I think it's not a bad thing to let people know. And also if you bump into them, it's kind of, you've done stage one. You don't have to do it at the shops or something, or at the vegetable aisle when you bump into them. It's a hard year. So if you're not doing very well on the second year, and I really hope you are, of course, but if you're not doing well, you're not failing. It resounds with deafening kind of grief. It really is that you know now this has really happened, and you know now that this is your life and they will not be there in your life anymore. And everything around you is, if you're widowed, is single, or if they came from your family group or a friend, it's different now. It's really, really different. Don't feel bad about it. Just know that it's like it is. This is just how it is. I also spend a lot of time kind of looking out the window from my bedroom, because I would sit sometimes not in bed, but in my bedroom, and I'd look out the window. And I'd be in the lounge and looking out the window. I did a fair bit of looking out the window at times, and if you're doing that, that's pretty normal. It's like a healing in a weird way, but you'll just sit there, look out the window, staring into space sometimes. I don't know, thinking, reminiscing, maybe just feeling kind of sad. And it's very normal to keep looking out the window if you're doing that. That's why I wanted to say that to you, because I actually said to another person who was actually widowed, I made some joke about me looking out the window, and she's like, yeah, I sit and look out my window too. Just look out the window. So if that's happening, don't worry about it, okay? You might also be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. After somebody dies, I think a lot of us have PTSD. It's undiagnosed normally, but often we do have that. So if you think you might have it, and that will be explaining this depression you have, and eating and sleeping disorders and withdrawing, etc., you can go and talk to your doctor about that too, or get some counselling. It's rare to get through this without some kind of weird stuff happening to you. You also might find in the second year you get sick. You'll pick up things more. You might get the flu or infections, or your back hurts, or you get more migraines. And I think that's just your body really getting a result of the big hit you've had when the person died. Because when they die, you sort of have to kind of soldier on, because there's so much to do. When a lot of those things have been done and cleared out and cleared up, you actually find that you might start getting sick. It's because your immune system drops. And I think about 18 months later, a lot of people will get sick after they've lost somebody around that time. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to be nice to yourself. You're not over it. You're still in it. And it's going to take a while to heal from it. You will get better. You will. Honestly, you will get better. But it's going to be a hard road, and it's a tough gig, actually, I think, getting through it. If you feel you need more help, just seek it, especially in the second year, because you're not getting as much. All right? That's what's happening. Everyone sort of thinks you're okay because you're turning up to the party, or you're still going to work, on all these things. But the grief is actually sinking down deeper. That's how I felt. It was like a deeper grief. It was inside me. I walked around with it all the time. Whereas before it was kind of obvious that I was upset. Now it was like I had my outside sort of person and went and did all the things. But underneath, I actually felt sadder and worse. You might also have more anxiety. You might wake up at night with anxiety as well. So be aware of that and see if you can get some help around that. Grief is really challenging. I think people walk around and we all pretend it's all okay now, but it's not. And the second year is a year of realization. That's what I'd say. It's a real year where you realize and you recognize that this is it and this is how it is. And you have to find things to make it easier. So try and focus on what you do have, what is happy around you, what is good. Whether it's small things like eating that piece of cheesecake and having a cup of coffee, or whether it's that lovely big bath, or your garden, or your family, or some of your friends, or maybe some of your hobbies. And you might find you've sort of dropped all that. You really can't be bothered and you can't get yourself going again, and that's okay too. It's all right. You can do it later. Just get through the minimal things. If you're not coping and you need to get a cleaner, do that. If you're not coping and you need to have takeaway twice a week, do that. Whatever you can do to function. Try and eat well if you can. Just force yourself to eat. Like count up how many fruit and vegetable you have a day, and protein, etc., and drink lots of water. Try and get some exercise if you can. But honestly, you're going to have some really bad days and you'll not be good at this, so don't worry about it. it will all start to get better and better. I found towards the end of the second year, towards the end part, like the last maybe quarter, it seemed to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I just started to have a few days or a few hours where I didn't feel like total crap, because mostly I just felt terrible all the time. But I did have a few glimpses of what it might be like, and that was kind of cool. It went away fairly quickly, but I still had them. And use things to put yourself somewhere else. I would actually say to my son, I'm just going to go and watch Netflix or go and read a book or whatever I was going to do, go and get on the internet and surf the internet, to put my head somewhere else, just so I could have a break from it, to distract from my life. I wasn't avoiding it, but I needed like a timeout, so use that. My heart really goes out to you. It's really hard to do, and the more we loved them and the more they were part of our life, the harder it is. But I'm telling you, it does get easier. And they keep saying time heals, but I don't think it's really time. I think it's actually acceptance. The more we come to accept that they've gone and they're not with us, but we have them in our hearts and in our minds, and we can feel their presence quite often, the more we accept that, the more we heal. I think that's how we get over it, actually. We just come to accept it's like this. It's very tricky to live in this fast-paced world as well, where people are so busy and there's not as much connect time. I think when we lived in the villages in the other centuries, it would have been different, wouldn't it, if you lived in a big village, because everyone would be coming over and talking to you, and you'd have community. Our sense of community maybe is a little bit different these days. I want you to be kind to yourself. It's a lonely, lonely time for you too. You're missing them, but it will kind of get better and you will get able to deal with it. And just take care of yourself, because people now are thinking you're fine, but you're actually maybe even a bit worse in a different way on the second year. That's what I thought. But honestly, towards the end of the second year is kind of like a turning point. It feels like a turning point, and many people I've spoken to said the same thing. Towards the end of the second year, there was like a turning point. So there's something to look forward to if you're not quite through it. And if you are listening but you've been through it, you'll understand exactly what I mean. So I'm sending you lots of love and lots of healing, and just hang in there. Don't give up. There's such a wonderful world out there, and there's still many wonderful people in our life. And we were really blessed to have them, weren't we? So I think of it that way. I'd rather suffer a bit, well, quite a lot, and have had them in our life than not to have had them at all.